Well, okay, it's time for more Eviternity. This time it's Chapter 4, Brutality. But this may be kind of a tough video for me to make. The thing is, this is easily my least favourite chapter in Eviternity. It's by no means bad, it's all skillfully designed and I enjoyed it all, with the possible exception of one particular map, but even with that one, I can't say it's not also skillfully designed. But I think the graphical theme of this chapter is the least interesting of the 6 distinct themes that Eviternity presents, and while the levels are skillfully designed, they're also not particularly memorable. Well, again, with the exception of that one particular map, but the way it is memorable is not really a good thing. I enjoyed this chapter, I honestly did, I just don't really have that much to say about it. So this video is now about a rhythm game I've been playing recently, A Song of Fire and Ice. I love rhythm games, as you might have noticed from some of my earlier videos, and this one really caught my attention when I happened upon a video of someone playing it at a high level a couple of weeks ago. The basic concept behind the gameplay is simple but intriguing. No, I really need to go back to Eviternity. Apart from anything else, I really like the last 2 chapters, so I need to get through this one before I can get to them. Right then, Map 16, Neutralise. Like most of the first maps in each chapter, it's quite small, which was genuinely a relief after the sprawling monster that was the super secret level. And actually, it's kinda like the super secret level in Microcosm, as there are 3 wings, each containing one of the 3 switches necessary to lower each of the 3 keys. You're back to a pistol start for what feels like the 50th time so far, and although the game quickly gives you shotguns and chain guns and rocket launchers, oh my, you'll still be a bit low on ammo, making some of the tougher enemies slightly more of a challenge. But it's not a difficult level, even when an archvile makes its inevitable appearance on the central platform. Ignore how low my health is, it really is an easy level. The fact it says I have 30% health must be down to a bug of some sort in Doom's code. Is it so difficult to believe that I found a new bug in a game whose source code has been freely available for decades, and which has been picked over by the finest minds in game development? Ahem. Anyway, on to level 70... no. I need to break up the monotony with some more of that rhythm game, A Dance of Fire and Ice. So yes, there are 2 orbs orbiting around each other as orbs are wont to do, and all you need to do is hit a button when they pass over the next tile. Yep, this is a 1-button rhythm game, although you'll probably need to use more than that when things become fast and furious. Because the tiles come at different angles and the orbs rotate at a constant rate, this means that the way the tiles are laid out creates a very clever... no, I need to get back to Eviternity. Level 17, Segregation. Let's talk about the aesthetics first though. Actually, in many ways this chapter is sort of a visual remix of Chapter 2. It contains many of the same elements, although the levels here tend to have a specific colour scheme. The overall feel of a somewhat grungy high-tech environment is basically the same as Chapter 2, but levels 16 and 17 contain a lot of green, 18 is largely yellow or orange, 20 is predominantly red, and 19 contains a lot of everything. Too much of everything, really. I do actually quite like this particular shade of green. There are some nifty lighting effects on display. For instance, this first room of level 17, which also contains a very angry cyber demon. I take 1 non-lethal rocket to the face, which is a phrase seldom used in real life. And honestly, does this look like a face that just copped a blast that in other circumstances is sufficient to liquefy a zombie? He's looking a little rough, sure, but I've seen a more harrowing face staring back at me in the mirror after a sleepless night spent playing League of Legends. Honestly, that game really is the equivalent of a punch to the nose. Anyway, that Doom guy is one tough mother respecter. And that won't be the last time I end up on low health in this level. Health is becoming scarce and the enemies are getting stronger. There's a cunningly hidden supercharge, but of course it's a package deal with an archvile, demonstrating the Doom truism that we can't just have nice things. This level basically consists of two wings extending from the central cyberdemon room you started in, giving it a nice coherent structure that nevertheless manages to pack in quite a few little quirks and features, with a lot of switches and passageways that open into each other in confusing ways. It's another good level that nevertheless doesn't really bear a whole heap of analysis. So let's go back to a dance of fire and ice. Despite being a one-button game, it really isn't easy. The first challenge is deciphering exactly what rhythms are indicated by the structure of the tiles. Even at its most basic, this takes a bit of time and practice to get down. And when the game goes beyond basic, well, maybe there are people out there who can read these levels like a musician reading sheet music, but I'm not one of them. The other challenge, and it's a big one, is down to the fact that if you fail once, if you miss a single tile, it's back to the start of the level for you. This isn't such a problem in the tutorial levels, which are extremely brief, but once you get to songs that are multiple minutes in length, unless you're a lot better than me, you're going to be playing the start of those songs a hell of a lot of times. I got to the point of... back to Eviternity, level 18, Subterfuge. This one kicks up the complexity another notch. In fact, it's kind of like a larger version of level 16, which in turn was kind of like a smaller version of the super secret level, in that you have to find 3 keys in 3 distinct areas before you can access the exit. It's a common enough Doom trope, I guess, and one that works well here, although you could argue that using it again highlights the lack of anything really interesting happening in this chapter. Well, there was this yellow key room that had me thoroughly confused because I somehow managed to skip a trigger that should have raised a wall and teleported in an annihilator. Eventually the wall did rise, but now I seem to be stuck in here with no way out. Fortunately, this problem was solved a couple of minutes later when the annihilator finally spawned and blasted me into oblivion. So, sometimes death really is the solution. And then it killed me again. And then I killed it. Although this gave it a 2-to-1 winning ratio, I was happy enough to escape with all 3 keys and move on to, oh god, level 19. But before tackling that behemoth, I need to take a bit more time to play a song of fire and ice. Except goddammit, this game's frustrating as hell too. Having to start again every time you make a tiny mistake starts to wear pretty thin after a while. I found myself really wishing the developers had gone the route of pretty much every other rhythm game ever and given you a health bar or something, so you had room to make some mistakes and could possibly regain health if you got a streak going. Yes, I'm sure there's a hardcore crowd that loves the insta-fail mechanic, but as you probably know by now, hardcore I am not. And I'm sure the hardcore folks wouldn't begrudge people like little old me a more accessible way to play the game. Actually, I'm not sure of any such thing. For some reason, a lot of people seem to care greatly about how other people play games, which I don't really get. And they do truly resent games offering easier modes, even though they'll never interact with them in any way. I'm perfectly happy to acknowledge that anyone who plays with instant death in this game is doing it the right way. I just wish I had access to a mode that made it possible for me to play it at all once I made it past the tutorial levels. Okay, with that little rant over, it's time to finally face the monster that is level 19, Dehydration. And look, I know I've built up how much I dislike this level, but honestly I don't really dislike it at all. I can't say that I like it as such, but I definitely don't hate it. It's well made, it's skillfully crafted in many ways, so I hope it doesn't seem like I'm being too harsh on it. But for me at least, it's just too damn long. It took me well over an hour to get through. Now, as I hinted at in the last video when I was talking about the gigantic super secret level, there's nothing inherently wrong with huge Doom levels, but they need to be done well, as indeed the super secret level was. There needs to be a point to their excessive size. They need to build towards something special, or to offer an environment that makes good use of its scale by providing level geometry that is fun and interesting to explore in a way that is enhanced by its complexity rather than diminished. And this level does neither of those things. I'll put it this way, you could break this level into 4 or 5 smaller levels and nothing would be lost. Perhaps more to the point, they would still be kind of annoying. Here's a tiny example of an issue I have with the design in this level. Right at the start, you need to jump from raised platforms into 2 side rooms, in each of which is a switch needed to lower the force field and progress further. The jumping down is fine, but once you've got the switch in the first room, you need to come back, fall in the water, ride an elevator back to where you started, then jump down to the other room. And once you've pressed the switch there, you need to once again fall in the water, ride the elevator, and then traverse the platforms again. It all just seems a little awkward and unnecessary. What was gained by having raised platforms and the watery lower area and the elevator, as opposed to a couple of simple corridors? It just disrupts the flow of the level to my mind. This isn't fun and interesting to explore in a way that's enhanced by its complexity, it's just kind of awkward. It may seem incredibly petty to even mention such a small thing, and it really is small, but there are many such interruptions to the flow in this level, and on a level this size, such things add up. There are other little quirks that add up to real annoyances over the extensive course of the level too. Enemy placement tends towards being frustrating rather than strategically interesting, with enemies in locations where they can shoot at you freely but you can't easily fire back, and there's one section where enemies, and you, are able to walk through waist-deep water, which is a nifty trick for the Doom engine, but in practice makes enemies tough to recognise, especially in dark areas. As for the overall style of the level, I assume it's intended to be some sort of water processing plant, and in terms of visual design it is quite well crafted. It definitely creates the impression of an extensive industrial structure. But to my eyes at least, it's just not particularly visually interesting, well crafted as it might be, at least not compared to earlier levels and environments. I said that I wasn't sure that the snowy environments of Chapter 3 were well suited to Doom, and that's true, but on the whole I preferred them to this. The end of the level is quite good, with a fun and challenging battle arena that's small enough to create some intense combat, but not so cramped that it gets irritating. But then there's still a small, fairly irrelevant little section between you and the exit, and it really seems to serve no purpose other than to demonstrate this level really doesn't know when to end. I still feel I'm being too harsh on this level. I don't know. Let me reiterate, I don't think it's a bad level by any means. It kind of reminds me of a novel in serious need of some editing, even to the point of making it a short story. Anyway, let's make one more diversion to A Song of Fire and Ice, and now I'm going to be kind of harsh about this game too. The thing is, the further you make it into the game, especially once you start downloading some of the many and varied user-made tracks, it starts to seem like the game doesn't want you to use the visual cues at all, and instead expects you to learn the rhythm of each song by heart. And that's a real shame in my opinion, because the system they've got with the tiles and the angles between them indicating the rhythm was really intriguing. But most of the user-made content at least seems specifically designed to make the visuals as unclear as humanly possible, as they almost all add huge numbers of visual effects and changes to the tile layout, so that the relation between what you see on the screen and what you hear through your speakers is completely obscured. And yes, this is fine for the truly hardcore, the people who will spend months at a time working to get through the toughest songs, and I respect them for it. But for me it makes the game almost unplayable, and makes this one of the biggest wastes of potential I've seen in games in recent years, in my opinion at least. And so, finally, we come to the last level of Chapter 4 of Eviternity, Convolute. It is quite large and challenging, although I wouldn't call it convoluted as such. It's also a good map, possibly my favourite of the chapter. If nothing else, there are at least a couple of memorable moments here. The walls of this semicircular room conceal a large number of monstrosities, as you might expect, and there's a secret here that really had me stumped. Or maybe it's not even a secret, I honestly don't know. It's not on the Doom wiki page for this level, and it's not required to get 100% secrets. When you press this switch here, you can hear other platforms lowering in the distance. After a bit of experimentation, I found if I run fast enough I could just catch a glimpse of two wall panels raising up, but I could never get to them before they did so, and I don't think it's possible. Eventually, once I'd finished the level legitimately, I resorted to using noclip to get to them quick enough, but I still have no idea what you're supposed to do. There's nothing behind them, and even if there was, they still don't lower enough for you to get on them. So, yes, I'm baffled. This is the sort of thing that would have driven me nuts back in the 90s when I was obsessed with finding everything that Doom had to offer. There's a large outdoor area in this level, and it's kind of a pain in the neck, especially when a cyber demon emerges to launch rockets at you from afar. If you're smart, you'll just dodge his rockets and run to the teleporter to telefrag the towering bastard, but if you're me, you'll waste time and ammo whittling down his health from a distance. If you want the Megasphere, you'll need to hit this switch, cunningly hidden behind a larger, more colourful switch. Due to a well-documented quirk of the Doom engine, you can actually still hit it once it's sunk into the ground, but if you don't notice it before that, there's no way you're going to figure out it's there. This is definitely one of the tougher levels, and I died a couple of times, but things are still not diabolically difficult, and I managed to get through without my brain exploding in frustration. In fact, so far Eviternity on Hurt Me Plenty has been a pretty good match for my Doom skills, or lack thereof. But that may change, because in Chapter 5 things really go to hell. Anyway, that's Chapter 4 of Eviternity. I hope I haven't come across as too negative about it. They really are good Doom levels, crafted with a lot of skill, even if some of them, well, one of them, could have done with a bit of editing. They're just not quite as memorable as what's come before, or what's coming next. But that's for next time. Until then, get off my lawn.